Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Ashwini from the Holistic GP podcast. Today, we have a special guest. He's Amaranatho. He is an ex-Buddhist monk and currently a corporate trainer. So we have got a lot of interesting questions to ask him and how we all can lead a better, mindful, stress-free Zen life, I guess. So without further delay, let's welcome Amar to the show.
Nice to see you today, Ashwin. It's lovely to meet you. Yeah, thank you for the introduction.
Thanks, Amar. Thanks. Now, welcome to the show. So I think first I want our listeners to understand, like, how has your work around this area been? And I know you were known as the playful monk.
Yes.
That was an interesting, time. So just give us a quick start about how all of this came about.
So the playful monk actually came about during my time as a Buddhist monk. I used to rap in public, and somebody really liked my raps, and they said, how can I get more information about what you do? And I didn't have a website or a brand or anything. I was a monk, of course, living a simple life, and so they helped me co-create this idea of the playful monk. And it came about because I was running these events at the monastery for families and young people, and then adults creative retreats. And it was this idea of bringing the insights from a monk and the learning that you get from using play. And since disrobing as a monk and being an executive and leadership coach, I've used that same brand as an approach to life itself. What is life all about? And my time as a monk was really exploring that. Who are you? How do you respond to the complexities of life? And then, of course, how can one make that playful?
Nice. So let's stop at where you said that. So how do we get through this life blissfully like a monk?
So the truth is, the idea of bliss is a bit of a spiritual marketing trick, and it's like
there's no such word as bliss and no such feeling.
No, there is totally a feeling of bliss, but the idea of getting caught up in bliss is a trap. It's how does one stay equanimous with the ups and downs of life? That as you can see, what we're dealing with now in the world is a lot of change. And that is the nature of the human realm. The realm that we live on is like that. And that we'll have moments of excitement in terrible situations, and in fun situations, we can also feel not well. They go together. And this ability to know that and really discern that clearly is what makes life fulfilling and truly happy. An example I might give would be like eating an ice cream, like 1, 2, 3 may be okay. You eat 4 or 5, it becomes too much. And so with anything that we do in any form of extreme, it can be too much negativity, even too much happiness.
But so everything in moderation, basically.
Moderation. A monk's life, monastic's life is one of, it's called renunciation. But I like the word moderate. What do you need to do to moderate your life for your well-being, for your true happiness? And that might be very simple things. For other people, it may be drastic, but it's this willingness to inquire, what is it that you need at this moment in your life? To stop, pause, and just notice, what is it?
And that changes, right, with every stage of life.
Oh, so much. When you say playful monk, I have to go back 20 years, to when that first started. And then if I go back, well, why did that all come about? I have to reflect on my childhood and how I was and how I was brought up. And where I am now, now I'm English, I live in the Netherlands, and I have a completely different life, to when I was a monk.
How has that changed who you are, Amma?
Oh,
how has that experience changed?
Yeah, my life
has it not?
Well, interestingly, it did drastically change my life as a monk, because it made me really look at what I was doing and who I was and how I'd been conditioned by my family and culture and society. And then when I left the monastery, of course, you lead a celibate lifestyle. So that means, there's no sex or no relationships. And now I'm in a relationship. And so, of course, you learn a lot more about yourself in a relationship. And the thing was, though, is that this monk, I would say, mindset, this ability to reflect on one's experience, to stay calm, notice how things affect you, hasn't changed. And this inquiry for me about who am I, this fundamental hasn't changed. And that's my commitment. My commitment is to that, to truth itself, and to be able to do that in any situation.
So can you still live with that mindset in day-to-day life when you're not in the monastery?
Yeah, that was my test. And that's also the reason why I lived in a monastery in the UK for 10 years. And then I traveled around the world freelance as a freelance Buddhist monk. I actually lived in Perth for a long time as well. And
I know we've got a beautiful monastery here. I love going to the one at Serpentine. Yeah.
Indeed, yes. I did quite a number of solitary retreats there. Actually, I did my last solitary 6-week retreat was in the monastery in Serpentine, right in the bush there. But this idea of using bringing out the monastic life, it was my test. And if you can't use these tools outside of monastic life, then they're not useful. Do you see what I mean? They have to be universal. And that's what I found, that they are universal. And you can do it in any, I work with corporates, and I work with high-flying executives. I'm working with a head of leadership of a company with 80,000 people. It still works with them. It may not be the same experience as being a monk, in terms of the amount of time that you get, but you can still bring those skills to that.
So what are the tools that is taught to a monk in a monastery that can be used by us in our day-to-day life?
I know this will sound absolutely ridiculous, and there's loads of those little jokes, but your breath.
Okay.
Your breath is so powerful. And this ability to notice it. If you say you're feeling anxious, you'll notice that you have a very fast breath. It can sound like that, and you'll notice that when you're calm, you're not breathing that much. So your breath, and if you explore your breath, you'll notice that it's neutral. It doesn't care about whether you're happy or sad itself, not the quality, the way that it's moving. But if you actually look at the breath, there's no judgment in it. It doesn't say, oh, this morning I think I don't like you and I'm not going to breathe for you. It never does that. In fact, it's a sort of a form of love. And your breath.
So just focusing on our breath is an important tool for all of us in our day-to-day life.
It's ginormous. It's ginormous. It affects every part of your body. It affects your nervous system. It affects your alkaline blood, your blood pH balance. It affects the way that your body is. Everything. And your breath,
and it cuts the fight-flight mechanism. So that's what I think we use it a lot for that.
Yeah. And and it also connects to your body. If you take it one step further, you'll have an awareness, a somatic awareness of how your body feels. And this is truly transformative, that we can embody. So like when we talk about happiness, how do we feel it? Not think it, but actually feel it. So we can have that blissful, euphoric feeling, even though it's temporary. And then we can also notice when we're unhappy. Where do we feel the tensions in our body? And how can we use our breath to relax that? And then the other thing that was really important in the monastery was the understanding of the complexities of our mind. The nature of the thought process. And in the West, and in general, in education, we're so mind dominant, and so our thinking process is the only way that we can think forward. And if we don't really understand how we've been conditioned and our habits, then we truly get caught up in loops and cycles. And it's and the more that you can watch and observe your mind, notice it, the more peace that you'll find. So it's not that you don't have struggles. It's not that I don't have struggles. I have plenty of them. But my ability to notice them as a thought process and be with
And not
them.
let your physical body be affected by them. Is
Well,
that?
sometimes it comes into the body, right? So you notice that as well. So you have a thought, and it comes into your body as tension, right? So the mind and the body, from my understanding, are unified. There's no separation between those, and so that your body is your mind, and your mind is your body, and so that memories can be held, and thoughts can be held, and emotions can be held in the body, and then they're labeled in the mind.
So now, since we are going there, and not like, currently a lot of negativity around us, what can we do to actually change our mindset and not let that external stress affect us? Is there any way to do that, or it's not possible?
It's always been possible since the beginning of time, in a way, that and we have to be realistic about what's going on, and that there is that stress and there is that uncertainty, and there always has been. And the ability to be able to observe complexity, to observe uncertainty, is the freedom. Pushing it away, just creates stress. Trying to keep hold of it creates stress. But just noticing it's like this, it is how it is right now. There's some terrible things happening in the world, but also having a good psychological understanding about, I would say, being trauma informed can be really helpful. And what that means is that if we read too much news, we will think that we're in that activity, because our body doesn't know that. Our mind doesn't know between non-reality and reality. It just knows that. So if you read something traumatic, there's a good percentage that you will actually feel traumatic. And that awareness of the breath and the body that I spoke about before, you can notice that. So if you read too much, I noticed I read too much, for example, about the Ukrainian war. And then because I have a history of that, my 3 generations back, my relatives came from around that area, Lithuania. And so I noticed those memories, and those thoughts coming up. And then I had to discern and step back away from the news and not give myself too much. Still want to honor what's going on, to recognize that people are suffering, and the joys of also what's going on. Spring, I'm in Netherlands, the spring is arriving. Spring doesn't care about the war. Spring is there. It's still beautiful. The bees are still out. The nature is amazing at the moment. And yet I can switch on the radio, read the newspaper, and think it's terrible.
So it's about understanding and recognizing it's there, but not letting you wallow in it, and looking at everything else also that's happening around you, and finding that grace and beauty.
Indeed. And you see, our mind, like fear, if fear is natural. That's how our bodies respond to certain situations. But if you keep feeding fear, you keep giving it more fuel, it will keep going. But if you don't give it any more fuel, it will stop. When things arise, they can arise and then they can pass away. Things can change. It's a part of how I learned it as a monk. The breath comes in and the breath goes out. If you try and hold your breath,
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So if you try to hold on to a situation, you say it's always going to be stressful. Of course, then you're holding on. But if you notice that's how it is, then you can release it. And there's so much more understanding about how stress and trauma affects the body, and how we can release it really easily.
Yeah. Now, let me go to another segment that I wanted to make sure we don't miss out.
Yeah.
Mindfulness is a big buzzword everywhere now.
It is.
Now, what does mindfulness mean to a monk?
What does mindfulness mean to a monk? Well, you see, that's a fantastic question, actually, a really fantastic question, because the way I've run in Perth, I did a lot of mindfulness courses myself. I've done these 8-week courses, and I supervise other mindfulness teachers as well, and retreat leaders. So mindfulness in itself is this ability to observe what's going on through your thoughts, feelings, and actions, and being able to recognize that. Mindfulness as a monk means something really different in a way, because there's an ethical component to it and there's a relational component to it. So a lot of mindfulness is about you get better, right? But if you apply that in a corporate situation, for example, where the organization is stressful, you're actually conditioning people towards stress, right? But mindfulness is a relational component, and then when you've got some sort of ethics around that, so ethical maturity is your ability to deal with a complex situation. How ethical you are is how much you can deal with complexity, because you've thought about things. So mindfulness that I learned also had an ethical component to it, and that makes it very different. And also, when you really extend and explore mindfulness in all its depth, it only takes you one way, and that's to peace and freedom, ultimate freedom. It's not about just healing a thing in your arm, or something in your head, or even depression. It's pretty good. It's research with mindfulness-based CBT is pretty good for depression. But the idea is to go all the way, and that's all I was ever interested in. Once I understood the technology of that, then only the thing I was interested in was peace and freedom.
Now, I understand that you were teaching mindfulness to medical professionals. How does the medical profession accept mindfulness for themselves? I mean, we're always telling patients, and we have to be mindful and all that. But as doctors, we are trained to always work in a chaotic situation, deal with chaos. How can we be mindful when the external environment is chaotic?
Isn't it always like that, though? When we walk down a high street, isn't that chaos? We don't know what's going on. We don't know where people are going. So we go to the supermarket. That can be pretty chaotic. I understand can be an emergency situation in a hospital, of course. But if you look, I always like that idea of the ambulance driver. I've often watched those videos. You can find them on YouTube, of an ambulance driver. This third-person view. They're just driving along. The blue lights are going. Everything around them says something big. The drivers get flustered. The ambulance driver is just driving. That's his job, right? That's the sense of observing, right? So in the medical profession, there's that, there's this whole thing of serving others. But what about yourself? So mindfulness really is a way of self-care. And I ran a 1-week course in Armdale Hospital when I was a monk there, and I was surprised by the statistics about doctors and medical staff's well-being. It was, because also it's not included in the training.
We are not taught to yet. Self-care and self-love is not.
No, and it's so important. It's so important. So actually, my work now, I work with I'm head of leadership for a coaching company in England that works with the National Health Service, and we bring executive coaching, and part of that can be mindfulness. And the biggest thing is actually to stop, pause, and see what's going on for yourself, and to really reflect and notice. And mindfulness is this really powerful way, and we've had very good results with this, where executives in very complex situations, have this chance to see how they might work through their difficult situations, their complexities, and usually they come up with the results themselves. But it's this relational attitude. You see, it's like not me and them; it's actually us together. How do you do it together? So it's a bit like on the aeroplane, when you have with the mask things, put your mask on first. Yeah.
Before you help the next person.
Before you help the next person, and there's so many caring people in the medical profession. I've met so many wonderful people. But if you only care for other people and you don't do it for yourself, what type
That's
of life?
That's not good either.
What type of life is that?
Great. I mean, I think that's a very big understanding. And I think more and more now doctors are taught that it's important for self care and
Yes.
getting help for yourself when you need to. So that sort of exposure has been good for the medical professionals. And.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also interesting research around doctors training, and that because there's so obviously you have to learn so much. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I've heard you've got to learn so much information, and
And you
in that
shouldn't complain. Like they
you
don't
shouldn't.
want you to complain or don't want you
Yes,
to, yeah, sulk. Yeah.
yes, right. Yeah, exactly. But that isn't that's not a sustainable biological model, because our biology is based, or as I understand it, our nervous system is based on being relational. So when we actually take in too many facts, when we take in too much, we actually lose that side of our nervous system, which is the relational side of it. And so learning how to bring that back online, learning how to work with the relational side of our nervous system is so important, because that's what will bring you back in contact with other people, and most importantly it'll bring in contact with yourself, because the first part of the nervous system, this vagus, is called the vagus nervus, the vagus nerve, is actually about orientating towards safety. And when one feels safe inside oneself, you can be safe with other people. And that all helps in being able to be better with your patients as well as with yourself.
I think, yeah, that's actually very true, and how important it is to regulate the nervous system and your vagus nerve correctly.
Co-regulate. Yeah.
Can we teach mindfulness to children? And how early can we start?
So I have a specific. It's another great question. So I work with a lot of children. I've worked with a lot of children at the family camps for many years, and worked with parents. Most of these children are now adults, so it's quite interesting, really, to see that. You can, but the important thing is not to impose.
Mm-hmm.
Not to impose something. So my idea of mindfulness for children is called play.
Okay.
Young children, storytelling, all these types of things. So at the family camps that I ran, I always tried to do things that are playful, not indoctrinate people about, oh, you should sit down and be quiet and all the rest of it, but actually just let it happen. And again, it's a bit like going back to the medical profession. Like if the parents set an example of sitting, say they have a formal meditation practice where they sit, it's a good likelihood that the children will just notice that and see the results of it. So if
And
you
do that.
scream, exactly. So if you scream at your children and say, "Come on, let's do some mindfulness," they're not going to be interested in that. But if they see you're happy, you're kind, you're talking to them in a loving way, then there's a good likelihood that they'll be interested in that, because they'll see what the results are from any age. This is actually, and again, this ability to breathe with your children, it can be so helpful. I've taught this to my own family about using this method, and it's so powerful, because usually we when we all get upset, it's like it just becomes an escalation. Particularly when I work with some of my corporate clients with their family life, they've got a very busy life, and then they're telling me about their children. I say, well, we can apply the same technique. So
Is there
rather,
is there a quick technique you can teach us or
yeah,
explain to our listeners?
really simple one, which you can do together, right? So it's called 7-11 breathing, right? And we were talking about I was talking about the vagus nerve, and this works directly with the vagus nerve. So it's very simple. Let's just do it together, right? So all it is you breathe in for 7. So I'm just going to count 7. 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you're going to breathe out for 11. So you just do your 11. 8, 9, 10, 11. Let's just do one more. Breathe in for 7. And breathe out for 11. And then breathe in for 7. One more. And breathe out for 11. Just notice now the quality of the space. We only did 3 breaths. And notice how your body feels.
It just feels lighter and clearer.
Thank you. So we just did 3 breaths. That's all. we're on different sides of the planet. We're doing this virtually, and with the listeners. So it's so simple, and you can make this into a fun game with your child if you want. Not but just this.
So how many breaths should we be doing for
Don't worry about all of that. Just get
Okay.
it. Really, just be. This is the playful thing. Just find out what works for you. Maybe maybe you need to do a few more, but you'll notice. You noticed. I didn't say you noticed. You said, "Oh, I feel lighter and more clarity." Right. So just notice if that's what comes about after 3 or 4 breaths. That's good. Mindfulness is a muscle. Yeah. So you don't. You can learn it in 6 or 8 weeks, but you have to practice it. Right, just like anything, not a lot, but it really helps to practice, to observe the breath. So it's just simple, isn't it? That was simple. You could easily do
I
that
feel
with
so
a client.
relaxed now. Like
Exactly. See the lightness in the air, and also the interesting in the contact in the space. So imagine doing that with a child. So you can even do it, holding hands or whatever it is. And then you can say these things that might be on your mind, especially say with a slightly older child, 9 or 10. Oh, what was that all about? And you can have a conversation about it. And in the work environment, of course, it's completely different. If you do that and then have a conversation, imagine what type of conversation that you could have.
we all will be more level-headed and not so agitated and
Thank you very
not so
much.
impulsive.
Exactly. So just tell me now, if you think about a complex or difficult situation, how is it in this space? You see,
It feels clearer and easier.
Thank you. So we haven't changed the external situation, have we? We haven't changed nothing about that. The only thing that changed was your own mindset and your physiology.
And that's all that matters, end of the day, right? It's
Exactly. And then through that one gets connection again. So then it goes out again so that you can use it. You can be to be compassionate with what's going on and how you can, like it in your own profession as a doctor, and mine as a coach and supervisor, how you can be compassionate to what's going on with your clients or with the world itself, and what you can do to respond. Maybe there is
so
something
when
that you can do.
compassion fatigue happens, is it when you have not actually cared for yourself and you
So,
have not replenished your own fuel?
and you don't know what's happened to you. So
Okay.
yeah, compassion fatigue is not knowing about the impact that it has.
So it's not about it's not about the other person or the external environment. It's about yourself not caring and not being clear.
Exactly. And then it may well be about the external environment. And then it may be that you make a choice that you don't want to be in that environment, or you need to speak up. But it is really important to know that when you see something or read something, even on YouTube, you watch something dramatic, it will have the same impact, can have the same impact as seeing it in real life. Your mind can't discern that. Now that's your job to notice. I've done a lot of workshops. Yeah, I've done a lot of workshops on compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma. Vicarious trauma is what you get when you listen to other people's difficulties, and if you don't see the impact, it's very easy for it to layer. Yeah, and then you really collapse. So it's trying to catch it in the moment and notice how that is for you, and have those rituals, to do that. And I also coach nurses through this company in England, and I noticed the nurses that are really able to have their ritual, their end of day ritual, close off their whatever's happened in a day, are really able to continue in that role.
Is there a fixed ritual, or everyone finds what works for them?
Again, you find what works for you, but rituals are somehow also universal in a way, aren't we? Like brushing our teeth, or these types of things. But there was also in the old days, I guess, or in the past, rituals were much more cultural, and we'd have our fairs and our cultural celebrations, and those have been sort of reduced. And in a way. And so we've had more modern ones, like maybe going to a concert can be considered a ritual. So finding your own ritual around that is really important for your well-being, you know. And we can all do that, you know. We can do it as a family, you know. We can, you know, again, the families that I see that are able to deal with complexity have these types of rituals.
Wow. Now we have covered a lot, and I think, so can you just tell us what are your three main piece of advice to our listeners?
Yes, your three
What's
main.
our takeaway today? I feel like I'm like floating, so I'm like, okay, let's get back. What's our three advice today?
Well, that's it. Firstly, that's important to notice what you just said, which is you feel well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the playful monk approach, that, you know, so I don't call myself the playful monk anymore because I'm not really a monk, but I like to use, what I say is I use the playful monk approach, and there's three things to that. The first one is explore,
Mm-hmm.
and that explore is co-exploring together. Yeah, it's what we've done today in our lovely conversation. Now we've explored together, and we see the results of what that is. And the second one is play. We made it playful, right? And play is the best way to learn. That's what all the research says. If you look at any research about children, play is the most effective way to learn. And play is about using your body. It's also, as a child, that's where you learn how to deal with your emotions. If you have free play, if you're able to do that. Play is about having a playground, so it's about having a container to play in. And when you bring explore and play together, yeah, like we've done today, also more deeper things can arise and come out of your experience. And so you might see more of the more difficult stuff. And so what I found really helpful to go with that is love. And that love
Mm-hmm.
is the love of kindness to oneself. And of course, when you feel love, you want to share, you want to give, you want to connect. So that, you know, so love is really important. And actually, what I started off when I ran these family camps, that's, people asked me what they were very successful, and people said, well, what did you do? And actually, it took me a long time to work out, explore, play, love. And then when I moved into the corporate world, I found that wasn't quite enough explanation. So I've built on it. There's two other parts, and the other part is presence. So explore, play, love develops and helps you recognize presence. And presence is your ability to be with any situation, right? Your ability
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And then the fifth one is connection. Yeah. When you have connection to yourself, yeah, then you have connection with others. And that's where you get impact. That's where you get results. Just like we've done today. You see, we've got a connection now. There's all sorts of things that we could do with it. We're not, because we're in a podcast situation, but we got connection, and
Yeah.
we've been present to one another, and you can just see that's for me is how I work with people. I don't work in a linear way. I work by just what we've done today, a deep and meaningful conversation and connection where there's a sense of empowerment.
Wow. I need to
Yeah.
go back and listen to this again.
That's what most people say when I give a podcast, and the strap line of Playful Monk is stay calm and connected in complex situations, and so that you can really realize your true potential. And
Stay calm and connected in complex situation. I think
yeah,
that's nice. And
yeah,
actually, that solves any problem. If you're calm and connected.
yes, exactly. And you could, yeah, that's exactly it. And that's where your true potential is.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Another aha moment.
Oh, dear.
Now, is there anything that you have read or listened to that's really inspired you, Amma, that you can share with us?
I mean, I've read so much, and but recently, last year, I had to give a talk. Actually, one of my few live talks during the pandemic last year to the chief financial officers in the Netherlands, and I was quite intimidated by the talk, to be honest. I've given lots of talks to hundreds of people, but that audience. So I went away. I actually took a weekend away, and I did a retreat, a reading retreat, and reflection, and some meditation around that theme. And one of the books I read during that time had a really big impact on me. And the book is called Transcendence. It's I think if I'm right, it's by Dr. Barry Schwartz. Names are always not so good for me, so I might not have got the name. The book's definitely called Transcendence. And in that book, he talks about Abraham Maslow's hierarchy. And this is something that you hear a lot in management speak about needs, physical needs, and it goes up. But the research says that Abraham Maslow's pyramid was never developed by him. It's not true. It's not his research. It was actually developed by a management guru. So one thing I learned from that book was, who do you trust? Right? And the other thing about it is that the ultimate point of the Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs is transcendence. And that is the same place as my life as a monk. And that's the same place as what my work is based on. This deep, free peace and freedom. And it is not based on whether you have your physical needs met, which is interesting because a lot of the time we speak about that. And the guy, this Dr. Barry Schwartz, he developed a different metaphor for drawing it. I can actually share a link because I spoke about it on my LinkedIn post, but it's like a sailboat. It's where you do need these physical things, but with the sail open, there's all sorts of ways that you can really explore your life, which is beyond just the basic needs, and going beyond all of that until absolute freedom. And I found that very inspiring to come from a scientific point of view. Really. So that was the book that had the most
nice,
impact.
Right? When science and spirituality can be linked, it makes more sense.
Yeah, and there's so much more research around that. The research around the vagus nervous system and what that does. The research, spirituality. The word itself is just the root of it is breath, spirit, breath, breathing. There you go. There's a lot of science around the breath now.
Exactly. Okay, I think we are coming to the end of our session. I wish we can keep going on, but no, it's really been very enlightening, Amar, to have you today. And before we go, where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at www.playfulmonk.net. And they can also find me on LinkedIn through my name, Amaranatho, which I'm sure you'll have in the text because it's a mouthful to spell. It's been lovely speaking with you today. It really has. I've really enjoyed the podcast, so thank you.
Thanks, Amar. So hopefully we have you soon next time with other interesting topics. We're not going to let you go so easily. So thanks again and have a good week ahead.
Thank you. Cheers.